It's 6 p.m. on a Friday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's start with the headlines. North Korea finally responds to the South's request for working-level talks next Thursday to exchange demands. The UN overwhelmingly passes a resolution on North Korea's human rights situation, demanding the regime's leadership be referred to the International Criminal Court. And Korea's finance minister says the focus of next year's economic management plan will be on boosting economic activities and restructuring efforts to better foster new growth strategies. North Korea has accepted the South's proposal for working-level talks aimed at possible higher-level dialogue down the road. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Song Ji-sun starts us off.
After months of waiting, Pyongyang has finally responded. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the two Koreas will hold working-level talks next Thursday on the northern side of the border village of Panmunjom, as proposed by Pyongyang Friday morning. Seoul has proposed working-level talks 3 times since September, before and after the reunions for war-separated families that were held at the North Mount Kumgang resort last month, but Pyongyang remained silent, often blaming the South for the lack of dialogue. As for Seoul setting up a permanent channel of exchanges for the war-separated families and holding regular reunions are the top priorities, although Pyongyang is likely to demand preconditions.
North Korea has been compliant in its agreement reached with the South, holding family reunions last month and increased civil exchanges. However, Pyongyang is likely to have demands, in particular the resumption of tours at Mount Kumgang.
Experts also suggest that the North leader Kim Jong-un will try to achieve progress in inter-Korean relations in order to boost the stability of his regime, ahead of a major gathering of ruling workers' parties set for May 2016. The latest invitation comes as the UN confirmed that discussions are underway for Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's trip to North Korea and indicates that Pyongyang may be seeking more channels for dialogue with the international community after years of heightened sanctions and isolation. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The United Nations has passed a resolution on North Korea's grave human rights situations. They have been adopted annually for a decade, but this year's resolutions contain much stronger words than the ones gone by. Connie Kim reports.
The UN General Assembly's Third Committee has overwhelmingly passed a resolution on North Korea's human rights situation. The resolution, drafted by the European Union and Japan, was adopted Thursday with 112 votes in favor, 19 against, and 50 abstentions. That's the largest support since 2005, when the resolution was first submitted. Like last year's, the resolution lists the regime's human rights abuses, including torture, public executions, and rape, and calls for the North Korean leadership to be referred to the International Criminal Court. Newly added was a call for North Korea to become a member of the International Labor Organization, abolish its political prison camps, and immediately release prisoners. It also included calls for the UN Security Council to continue discussing and engaging in North Korea's human rights issues. But despite newly added calls to improve the regime's dire human rights situation, some experts say the resolution is less likely to deal a heavy blow, especially as a top UN official is to visit Pyongyang.
The resolution does not hold any binding measures. Also, as the passage of the resolution comes before UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's visit to the North, it will be hard for the resolution to strongly pressure North Korea.
In addition, the low possibility of North Korea's human rights issues being up for debate next month at the UN Security Council is also another reason North Korea is less likely to feel the impact of the resolution passage. This, as the resolution did not pass with the unanimous support of council members like last year. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Moving on, President Park Geunhye arrived in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia for the final leg of her 3-nation tour. She is scheduled to attend the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit and the East Asia Summit over the weekend, where participating nations will seek ways to bolster regional integration. Leaders from the United States, Russia, China, and Japan, along with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, are attending the East Asia Summit. There's a lot of attention on what stance President Park will take on the South China Sea dispute, given that Seoul has close ties with both Washington and Beijing. She will also hold a one-on-one with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull on Saturday. The Korean government is working on its economic management plan for next year. The finance minister says the focus will be on building new growth strategies as the country tries to get a better handle on the fast-changing economic situation. For details, let's turn to Kim Min-ji.
Fostering new growth engines will be the focus of next year's economic management plan. That's according to Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan, who says the government will boost economic activities as well as restructuring efforts to adapt to the fast-changing economic environment at home and abroad. The finance chief says there's increasing uncertainty due to risks from the world's two largest economies, namely the U.S. pushing to normalize its currency policy and slowing growth in China. In addition, there's also instability in emerging markets and the issue of international terrorism. As for domestic concerns, Minister Choi says slowing global growth following the financial crisis has taken a toll on the nation's shipbuilding and steel sectors by causing oversupply. However, noting that Korea recorded its highest quarterly growth in 5 years in the third quarter, the minister says Korea is on track to post growth in the 3% range next year if it maintains its current momentum. The government expects the economy to grow 3.3% on year in 2016. But some analysts remain skeptical, saying Korea's economic growth rate will fall short of the government's target due to weak domestic demand and slowing exports. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's household income for the third quarter of this year has posted its lowest growth rate in 6 years. A Statistics Korea report on Friday revealed that earned income for households averaged roughly $2,560 a month, a 0.1% increase from last year. Meanwhile, the total monthly income increased 0.7% on year, reaching an average of $3,820. However, in terms of inflation-adjusted growth, the rate amounts to 0%. The Finance Ministry attributes the falling growth rate for earned income to slow growth of new jobs coupled with fewer cash bonuses awarded during this year's Thanksgiving or Chuseok holiday. In politics, the ruling Saenuri Party and the incumbent administration vowed to pass 5 labor reform-related bills currently pending at the National Assembly by no later than early December. That's when the current regular assembly session ends 100 days after activities began. Park Ji-won tells us more.
The ruling Saenuri Party and the government confirmed their positions to complete the passage of the 5 pending bills related to labor reform. The ruling party says labor reform is the inevitable choice for raising the quality of the life of workers, as well as increasing national competitiveness.
The 5 revisions should absolutely be passed during this assembly. If it fails to pass the parliament within the year, the momentum of labor reform could be lost forever because the focus will shift to April's general elections from next year.
Representing the government, Minister of Employment and Labor Lee Ki-kwon also stressed the rationale behind swift passage of the 5 labor reform bills.
The 5 labor reform bills aim to strengthen fairness, transparency and predictability in the labor market, as well as act as a social safety net by re-establishing orders on regular and irregular workers.
While the ruling bloc has asked for the opposition's cooperation, the two parties remain at odds. Among the 5 bills to revise labor-related laws, the most controversial are the Act on the Protection of Fixed-Term and Part-Time Workers and the Act on the Protection of Temporary Agency Workers. The ruling party says the bills will help to prolong part-time contracts from 2 to 4 years, which will induce more companies to convert short-term contracts into regular positions. Regarding the bill to revise the Act on Protection of Temporary Agency Workers, the goal is to broaden industries where temporary agency workers can be dispatched to make Korea's stiff labor market more flexible. However, opposition parties argue that the 2 bills will not only make layoffs easier, but would worsen rather than protect working conditions for irregular employees. As the ruling party remains firm in its stance that the 5 bills should be passed together as a package, conflict at Parliament is expected to continue for the next few weeks. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Investigators in Paris say the suspected ringleader of the attacks in the city was indeed killed in a shootout with police on Wednesday morning local time. However, the terrorists may be plotting a new and even more devastating type of attack. Son Jung-in brings us the latest.
French authorities confirmed Thursday that Abdelhamid Abaaoud, a senior figure in the group that calls itself Islamic State, was killed during a police raid in a northern Paris suburb a day earlier. It was not clear, however, whether the alleged ringleader of last week's terror attacks in the French capital was killed by police or blew himself up. Authorities are still looking for Salah Abdeslam, a friend of Abaaoud's, who is suspected of being involved in the attacks by driving one of the gunmen in a rented car. The search for the 26-year-old, who was thought to have fled to Brussels, has now been extended to include the Netherlands. Belgian authorities have arrested 9 people in the country. 7 of them are known to be linked to the suicide bomber who blew himself up outside the Stade de France. France's lower house of parliament has also voted to extend the state of emergency by 3 months. The measure, if approved by the Senate, will allow authorities to conduct extensive searches and ban large public gatherings. Ahead of the vote, Prime Minister Manuel Valls warned France could face other types of terror attacks.
We must not rule anything out. I say this with all the precautions needed, but we know and we bear in mind that there could be a risk of chemical and biological weapons.
The warning came as reports emerged that ISIS has set up a branch dedicated to develop chemical weapons with the help of scientists from Syria, Iraq, and other Middle Eastern countries. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Abdelhamid Abaaoud, he is more than just the man who orchestrated the Paris attacks. We have details on the background of the man before he joined the militant group that calls itself Islamic State. We turn to our Kim Ji-yeon.
The smiling young man with the gun is Abdelhamid Abaaoud, the mastermind behind the Paris attacks, which claimed 129 lives. He's also suspected of being the leader of an Islamic State branch that recruited hundreds to join the group from Belgium, where he grew up. Abaaoud was raised in a moderately successful family from Morocco. His father, Omar Abaaoud, ran a clothing store in Molenbeek, west of Brussels, said his son was not religious and had not even attended a mosque during childhood. The junior Abaaoud was admitted to an exclusive Catholic school, College Saint-Pierre du Clos, but only stayed there for a year, with some saying he was dismissed for delinquent behavior. In 2010, he spent time in jail for theft, and while in prison, he was held with Ibrahim Abdeslam, who was later identified as one of the suicide bombers of the Paris attacks. In 2013, Abaaoud got involved with ISIS and entered Syria the following year. He then persuaded his 13-year-old younger brother to join him in Syria. While in Syria, Abaaoud was featured in various recruitment campaigns for the terrorist group. In a video released in March this year, Abaaoud is seen smiling and making jokes as corpses are dragged behind a pickup truck. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, earlier this month, Hyundai announced the Korean auto giant will be taking its line of luxury cars under the Genesis brand to try and crash the luxury car market. Kwon Jang-ho takes a look at its prospects and possible bumps in the road.
It's a new start for Hyundai. Like Toyota, which created a luxury car brand called Lexus in 1989, Hyundai is now relaunching their Genesis line of cars under a new brand to try and make inroads in the lucrative and growing luxury car market. Luxury car sales in the world have been increasing for the last 6 years. Last year's sales reached over 8 million, a number expected to increase to 10 million in the next 4 years. Hyundai has spent the last 6 years trying to build up experience in the luxury car market after releasing the first Genesis in 2009.
As far as timing goes, the luxury car market is growing, and the Genesis brand image has been good so far, so they are looking to continue that momentum with this new strategy.
But the biggest hurdle the Genesis brand must overcome will be getting customers to get past its parent company's name.
I mean, in the U.S., I think Hyundai has really positioned themselves well as a value brand, and that doesn't necessarily scream luxury. So I think that they have an uphill battle to change consumers' minds about that. I mean, I can't say that they will be unsuccessful, but I think it's definitely going to be challenged, and it's going to take a long period of time.
But that image may already be shifting. Although global sales of luxury cars have been increasing, it's not been a great year in the US market. Sales of established car names have dipped significantly in the last year. But sales of the Genesis rose almost 40%. Experts agree that Hyundai's reputation has been improving, but to establish itself in the luxury market, more is left to be considered.
They have to think long-term, and to become a true luxury brand, more consideration needs to be taken into its philosophy and desired position in the market.
Hyundai has become one of the biggest names in the global auto industry. But by spinning off this Genesis brand, it's hoping it can take the leap forward to establish itself in the luxury car market as well. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching. Do tune back in at 10 p.m. Korea time for more.